Welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to kickstart our presentation with the topic, The Power of HITRUST from R2 and Beyond. I just wanted to say hi to all of you who are joining us this morning, evening, or late night if you're joining internationally. And with that, let's dive right into some introductions. So I'll kick it off on my side. I'm Sami Chaudhary, one of the co-founders and chief compliance officer here at Prescient Security. I lead our audit practices, which includes SOC 2, ISO, PCI, HITRUST, FedRAMP, CMMC, you name it. All 3 or 4 letters, confusing compliance soup, if you will. I'm happy to help if you have any questions on any of that. With me, I have Ryan. Ryan.
Yeah, thanks so much, Sammy. Ryan Patrick, Vice President Adoption at HITRUST. Been with HITRUST a little over 3 years, but prior to that, worked for several firms very similar to Prescient's in helping folks through the HITRUST journey, but also with normal security services, everything from penetration testing to risk assessments, tabletop exercises, you name it. I've probably done it pretty poorly, but it tried really hard. But yeah, my role here at HITRUST is part evangelist. So I do a lot of speaking, but also, probably more importantly, I see myself as an educator bidirectionally, meaning educating the market on the things that HITRUST is doing, but also learning from the market and bringing that back internal to the teams at HITRUST, educate them on what the market needs, wants, and desires are. So happy to jump in on this conversation. It's a favorite topic of mine, and I think I'm going to turn it over to Sanjeev.
Thank you, Ryan, and good morning, good evening, everyone. My name is Sanjeev, and I work with Prescient Security as a vice president. Primarily, I take care of 2 audit practices, ISO and HITRUST. This is my 22nd year in this domain and third year with Prescient Security, and I just welcome everyone with your thoughts, with your questions towards the end of this session, and we will try to highlight everything which is pertaining to HITRUST, that why you should be aiming to be a HITRUST compliant or HITRUST certified organization. Thank you.
Thanks, Sanjeev. All right, so let's go over the agenda for today. So we have why assurance matters to kick things off. Why we what we do. Why do we do that here in the certification attestation world? So we'll kick it off with that. Continuous improvement is critical. Compliance is obviously not a one and done thing. Innovation in HITRUST and what's new there. Ryan will chime in. The power of HITRUST CSF, which is the SaaS tool that, the standard that HITRUST has. And we'll talk obviously about the MyCSF tool later on in the session as well. Breaking the myth or myths that exist out there when it comes to HITRUST. We'll deal with them one at a time. As well as choosing the right HITRUST certification for you if you're going down this journey for the first time. You want to know about the different types of assessments that you can choose from. HITRUST reports will show you what they look like, kind of a sneak peek into different types of reports and what you can do with them and how to handle those conversations with HITRUST QA. And we'll wrap up our conversations with that whole process around QA and the quality control that HITRUST is very well known for. With that, let me turn it over to the speakers.
I'm in. Tag me in, Sammy. All right, so let me start off before I jump into the slides and remind everybody that this is designed to be less of a lecture and more of a conversation. So, the 3 of us will probably chime in on each other's, sections, if you will. But please write your questions into the chat as you're thinking them. If they are uber relevant to what we're talking about, we may weave it in and answer it in real time, but we will definitely get to it at the end. So, what I like to challenge people with is ask the really hard questions. I'm an open book, so I'm going to be pretty transparent about the things that HITRUST does. Even if we don't do it great, we're working on it and trying to do better at that. But please ask the tough questions, or at least ask any questions that come into your mind. But with that said, let's get into why assurance matters. And when we talk about assurance, we're talking about the process around these assessments, if you will. Sammy talked about the acronym SOUP, the compliance SOUP, everything from PCI to CMMC, FedRAMP, HITRUST, ISO, NIST, GDPR, CCPA, all of the acronyms that you all are overwhelmed with on a daily basis, and I am too. They're not all created equal, meaning that there are some that don't require much assurance at all, meaning they can be a self attestation. If you think about the way any flavor of NIST works, NIST itself is not coming in and telling you this is exactly how you need to test this, or this is exactly how you should implement this control and test the control for effectiveness and scalability across the enterprise. Whereas with something like SOC 2, there's more specific guidelines on how testing and the testing window works, so on and so forth. But what we've done at HITRUST is we've clearly defined exactly how to scope the assessments, who can conduct the assessment. So it's not anybody who can do these assessments. It has to be really smart people like the ones I'm joined with today at Prescient, who have been trained and authorized to do this work. So it's not somebody who is just going to say, oh, I want to do NIST work today, and they start testing against NIST. It's really boiling down to not just the scope, which I mentioned, and I'm probably going to mention that several times because scoping is so important, but how is testing to be conducted, in what time period, and in what way, right? So we clearly define the sampling methodology. So if you have a population, say, of 200 endpoints, we will tell you exactly how many of those endpoints you need to test in order for the testing to be sufficient and to demonstrate the maturity of the effectiveness of that control. We also are using standardized reporting formats, meaning HITRUST is not only the standards body that develops a framework, but we're also the certification authority against that framework. So you can't get HITRUST certified unless it's submitted to us and we run it through our quality assurance process, which we will get into in a future slide. So what that gives you, or whoever you share your HITRUST certification report with, is a standardized, consistent way of ingesting that report. And again, I'm going to use NIST because it's somewhat loosey-goosey. If I'm a professional service firm, I can write a NIST report any way I want. If you're in healthcare and I'm a professional service firm, I could write a HIPAA report any way I want. SOC 2 is a little more defined, but each CPA firm kind of writes them a little bit different. And there's thousands of CPA firms that are doing this type of work. So it makes comparing one SOC 2 to another SOC 2 to a NIST report really, really difficult. Whereas HITRUST report to HITRUST report to HITRUST report all looks generally the same, or is the same, depending on which assessment you choose. So it makes ascertaining control maturity that much easier because you don't have to hunt for where the information that's relevant to you is. It's going to be this control in this section, in theory, on this page, where you're looking for MFA, and it's going to say, yep, MFA at this organization is fully implemented. So we don't believe in establishing trust. And when I say assurance, you should equate trust and assurance kind of equally. We don't believe that trust can be built based on self-attestation. There needs to be an independent audit. And that's why we work with firms like Prescient to have them do the audit work. HITRUST doesn't do any auditing, testing, or validating. So we push it out onto these independent auditors, which creates a level of independence to just up the game from an assurance perspective. And I haven't said really anything about what's on the slide right now, so now I'm going to jump into that. If you look at why assurance matters, and these statistics vary based on the survey source, but generally speaking, somewhere between 40 and 60% of organizations in 2024 reported some kind of incident and/or breach. It's a pretty alarming number. You are statistically more likely than not to suffer an incident or breach than you aren't. I guess I'm repeating myself. Looking at the graph here, in 2024, high trust certified environments had less than 1% incident slash breach rate. And I know those two things are not the same, but all the incidents that were reported to us were actual breaches. So when you compare a less than 1%, in this case 0.59%, to nearly 40 to 60%, that's where it becomes painfully obvious that assurance matters. And if you look at how many NIST assessments are happening, PCI, SOC 2, ISO. One, they can't quantify this. There's no centralized authority that could actually report these statistics, whereas because everything comes through HITRUST, we can. But just by, statistically speaking, there's a lot more of those assessments out there that fall into that 40 to 60%. So we believe that our assurance methodology and our assurance program is what's driving these really low breach numbers. And like I look at the work that HITRUST is doing and the effectiveness of what HITRUST is doing, that less than 1%, kind of in two buckets. And I just talked about the assurance side of it. We are known for rigor. We are known for forcing a really comprehensive assessment because we're pushing back on the assessors like Prescient during the QA process. And I'm sure Sanjeev has some horror stories about our QA team just getting really nitty gritty into the way the assessment was conducted and the evidence that was supplied. So that's one bucket. The second bucket is HITRUST isn't selecting the controls for our assessments because we feel like these are the right controls. We're actually utilizing near real-time threat data to drive the control selection. So every 3 months, we're doing analysis based on the last 3 months worth of threat intelligence and mapping that against the MITRE attack framework and looking at the TTPs for the exploits based on the threat data. We then utilize the remediation recommendations from MITRE and map that to or bounce that off of the controls that we have in our assessments today. And if we identify a threat that's happening in the wild today that we don't have a control to protect against, or an existing control needs to be adjusted in order to better protect, we will do that. So if you look at ISO 27001, the most recent version is 2022. Before that was 2013. Lots have changed in that 9-year period, and there's probably lots that have changed in the last 3 years since the last release of ISO. We're doing this on a 90-day period. So the relevancy of the controls within our assessments is beyond compare. Nobody else is doing this level of analysis at the frequency that we're doing it, and that's why we feel really, really strongly that less than 1% is a legitimate 1%. Obviously, there's a margin of error in everything, but we feel really strongly that that's, along with the assurance model, the assurance program, why we see such low numbers. We also have a forcing function built into our assurance program. We require corrective action plans, and Sanjeev's going to get into this in a future slide. We require corrective action plans for controls that are not fully implemented. And then we require organizations to actually demonstrate meaningful progress, if not closing those caps before they can be recertified or extend their certification with our R2 assessment. And if you look at the graphic that's on this slide, you can see year over year, organizations that are pursuing HITRUST and certified against HITRUST, the number of caps have come down, and it's in the data. Like, if we can prove that we're kind of a forcing function for organizations to improve. Whereas if you have something like a SOC 2, you get a SOC 2, it may have exceptions, or it may be a a dirty report, so to speak, the next year you get one, it could be the same exact report. You're still going to get that report from a CPA firm. Again, I'm not here to bash on SOC 2, but just trying to draw a comparison that HITRUST certified environments are actually improving over time because we kind of force them to improve over time. And the last thing I'll throw on here, because it's on the slide, is we try to make the assessments comprehensive. And through that comprehensive nature, we want them to be more efficient. So a lot of organizations are in the cloud, if not born in the cloud these days. All the major cloud providers are HITRUST certified at this point. So instead of carving out AWS or carving out Azure and saying, well, we're not going to go test that, you can actually utilize our shared responsibilities program to pull the results of AWS's HITRUST certification or Azure's or GCP. And there's tens sounds doesn't sound that much. All the top CSPs are HITRUST certified. So it actually reduces the effort on your end to get HITRUST certified because you are pulling the information for your managed service provider or the cloud provider into your own assessment. Less work that you have to do, but it makes a more comprehensive assessment. So a couple of things about HITRUST and the things that we're focused on today is we're really focused on AI and not just Gen AI. We last year released two different assessments, one that's more around risk management of AI systems. But then in December of 2024, we released an actual AI security certification. It's roughly 44 controls that has to be built on top of one of our existing assessments, but it's for AI deployers or implementers to demonstrate that there is actually security wrapped around the system, the model, the way it's working, so on and so forth. So we're really focused on seeing how AI continues to evolve, and we want to be at the forefront of that. We haven't touched on this yet, but HITRUST is kind of a harmonization of many frameworks. We're mapped right now to over 60 other standards, regulations, or frameworks. So everything that we've already mentioned in this conversation, we've mapped. So you can add those to your assessment. And if you have a reporting requirement, let's say to the federal government for NIST 800-171, instead of handing them a HITRUST assessment that's in HITRUST ease, so to speak, it's HITRUST control language, we have these insight reports that actually does the translation of HITRUST into NIST 171. So again, for maybe CMMC folks out there, you're not handing them something they don't understand. You're going to hand them something that they understand because it's written in that 800-171 control language, but it's the results of the HITRUST testing. So we're trying to figure out better ways to work within a multi-reporting or multi-regulated environment for most organizations to make it that much clearer, that much more simplified. And then I think the thing that we're most excited about right now is we've integrated with ServiceNow. If you think about third-party risk management and how difficult it is, and if you're trying to get HITRUST because someone's asking you to do that, or you want to differentiate yourself in the market, that's all TPRM all day long. So we've built an app that's available today in the ServiceNow marketplace where you can leverage, if you are going to consume HITRUST reports, you can leverage the workflows built in ServiceNow, but also manage your vendors through this app from a HITRUST perspective in ServiceNow. So a little bit of a, hey, here's where we are today. Here are the things we're focused on, what we're excited about. We may get into a little bit more depending on how much time we have and where HITRUST is going in the future. But I think I'm going to pause there. I'm going to take a breath, I'm going to drink some water, turn it over to Sanjeev. You're on mute, Sanjeev.
I'm extremely sorry about that. I was saying thank you to you, Ryan, for taking up on those slides and highlighting the innovations being brought up in high trust assessment. So one might think, okay, that why they should go for high trust assessment, or what is the real benefit of being high trust assessed organization, high trust certified organization. Based on my personal experience, okay, I would just like to narrate one scenario, and I mean, all are going to relate to that. See, when we talk about information security, what is the central idea? The central idea is to secure the information, and information has its own dynamics, right? When information is at rest, information is being processed, information is in transition, okay, and information is at the destruction level. From what threats we are trying to safeguard that information? We are trying to safeguard any sort of information, okay, from breach of confidentiality, integrity, availability, privacy, okay. And what are the ways to protect this? Absolutely, I mean, if we talk in the technical terms, firewalls, routers, switches, IDS, IPS, encryptions, whatnot. So what I'm trying to say here is that it's not like that people are going to be aware about a kind of a certification for the first time which deals with information security. We are aware there are a lot of frameworks, a lot of security standards, okay, and they provide you the list of controls against which you have to demonstrate your conformance. What HITRUST is trying to do here is, okay, so first of all, it's a global certification, okay, which itself is known as CSF, Common Security Framework. One organization is willing, okay, to be ISO certified because the clients wants them, to be ISO certified. Okay, another organization is willing to be HIPAA compliant because there is a statutory regulatory compliance in place. Okay, and another organization is aiming for HITRUST. Guess what happens? This organization who is aiming for HITRUST certification, because HITRUST certification is a common security framework, has adopted common controls from almost more than 40 authoritative sources. Okay, so the common controls are going to be present in ISO framework, in SOC 2 framework, in GDPR, in HIPAA, and once this organization becomes HITRUST certified, they are going to be awarded with the high trust certification, but at the same time they are compliant, okay, to almost 3 to 4 or 5 different frameworks and standards. So this is the power of high trust, that you be high trust certified, okay, for once, but at the same time you're showing your compliance for 10 different frameworks and standards in the same single effort. Okay, so I mean, authoritative sources, when we talk about that, includes everything, including HIPAA, NIST, ISO, PCI, GDPR. What I was trying to say initially is that this is data, right? Data has different labels. When you talk about HIPAA, you talk about PHI, EPHI. When you talk about GDPR, you talk about PII. When you talk about ISO, you talk about uh, business critical data. When you talk about PCI DSS, you talk about PAN data and SAT data, permanent account number, and sensitive authentication data, right? So other than some statutory or regulatory compliances, some specific requirements, okay, rest all the requirements seems same, okay, which even HITRUST is trying to portray. However, the difference is that this is more standardized, okay, trying to accommodate from almost 40 to 42 different authoritative sources, okay, make it relevant to the industry challenges, unlike few other frameworks or the standards which gets revised after 3 years, 5 years, or sometimes 7 years. Okay, so from that perspective, I mean, the idea is not to demean anybody, okay. Every standard or every framework has its own benefits, merits and demerits. What we are trying to talk here about the high trust power is that this tries to keep it more relevant compared to any other standard, any other frameworks. Okay, unlike other standards where the revision is going to be happening after 3 years or 5 years or 7 years, it is getting revised looking at the industry challenges, upcoming threats, and based on that the authoritative sources are being included. The framework is being made more robust so that we get our objective met of having a sound security posture. So that helps to streamline your entire security posture. No matter whether you are interested only to be HITRUST certified, but or also in the same bargain, okay, you are willing to be compliant for other standards as well. Just assume about a scenario, okay, that you have to participate in an RFI, okay, where they just want to understand whether you are adhering to the ISO controls or HIPAA controls, HIPAA framework. Are they really asking you to be HIPAA compliant or ISO certified? The answer is no. They just want to understand whether you are complying to those controls or those framework requirements. Here, HITRUST plays a vital role. You are HITRUST certified, but because it's common security framework nature, you are, in a position to say that yes, you are complying to almost, maximum controls of that framework. And nowadays, recently, HITRUST take the decision to make the standard more relevant by adopting artificial intelligence and machine language related issues as well, okay, so that the risk is identified, and that can be clubbed with different variations of HITRUST assessment. Maybe it could be E1, I1, or R2. We'll talk about that little later, okay. So where the HITRUST even used to be the elementary, certification, more focused toward the cybersecurity. But at the same time, if you think that your real challenge is artificial intelligence and its threat, this is the right standard to go ahead with, where you can blend all the artificial intelligence related controls and its perceived risk along with your regular HITRUST assessment. So you are putting your effort to be HITRUST even certified or I1 certified. However, at the same time, you are going to be awarded with an individual report dedicated to artificial intelligence risk assessment in the same effort. So, that is the real power of HITRUST Common Security Framework. And in true sense, okay, this is really going global. This is already global, but like few standards or few framework which is limited to a certain geography. I don't want to just take those names, okay, but everybody is very much aware about such standards and frameworks. Against that, the beauty of HITRUST assessment or HITRUST certification, HITRUST CSF, is this is global in true sense, without any boundaries. This is as relevant, as it is in United States. Okay, similarly, it is relevant, okay, in India, in Singapore, in Australia, in any country across the globe where the organizations are willing to safeguard their data. Now, the data is not the healthcare data. That is what we need to understand here. HITRUST is not just to safeguard a health data. This is not only for healthcare domain. That's the reason it's named as CSF, Common Security Framework. You name it, okay, you can deploy this, the suggested controls, no matter in which geography you are, no matter in which industry you are. As we talked about, data is data, right? That is what you're trying to safeguard, whether it is health related data or that is PHI related data or business critical data. So all these controls are common in nature compared to any other standard or the framework based on the authoritative sources selected, and that is making the HITRUST global certification in true sense. And when I'm talking about all these things, sometimes we come up with this question that if it is so beautiful, okay, then why this is so difficult to implement. Generally, uh, for people who have joined this webinar, okay, I'm practicing HITRUST since 2016, and when the first time when I started working on HITRUST assessments, that was version 8.0. Since then till date, this question have been asked in many forums, different platforms, that HITRUST is one of the lengthiest assessment, and that too, it is only for the healthcare domain, or this is very expensive, time consuming, or lot of technical controls, lot of evidences are required to be tons of evidences, because this is going to be assessed against multiple parameters, okay, and whether it is going to be accepted only in United States. So there could be more, but we have come up with at least these four most relevant myths, okay, which we get encountered every now and then. So I'll try to answer that one by one. That when we talk about high trust, is this only for the healthcare? Absolutely not. Healthcare is a common security framework, and this can be applied to any domain, whether it is healthcare, BFSI segment, or anywhere where you think you need to protect your data from being breached, and for its confidentiality, integrity, availability, and privacy. Whether it is at the storage level, it is in process level, it is in transitioning level, or it is being destructed. So yeah, it is applicable for any domain, any industry. Is it super expensive, time consuming, and difficult to pass? I would say it is based on organization's business need. That let's think, what is at risk? What is at risk? If you think from this perspective, that not being HITRUST compliant, what you're going to lose versus the money which is required to be spent to be HITRUST certified, you will find that it is not as costly as the amount of penalties which one organization has to pay, okay, if they are found not being compliant, and penalties are being imposed, and that is going to be in millions and billions. Okay, so definitely it is not that expensive. Okay, uh, time consuming, of course, yes. If you want to go ahead and be HITRA certified, one of its for its one of the gold standard, okay, certainly it has its own benefit, it has its own advantages. At the same time, to get that recognition that you're HITRUST R2 certified organization, obviously you have to go that extra mile, okay, to make your security posture a robust system which is going to be implemented. So more robust system would require definitely some extra time, but difficult, not at all. Okay, there is no difficulty as such. Okay, difficulty maybe in terms of understanding based on certain myths, that okay, I mean, too many evidences are going to be required. It is technically going to be very difficult for a normal organization who is aiming to be HITRUST certified for the very first time. These are simply the myths. I just want to break this myth by, I just don't want to oversimplify this, but yes, I just want to give you a confidence that if you have ever implemented, or if you have ever worked in any sort of ISO assessment, ISO 27001, or information security management system, then you can relate with the standard, okay, in the simplest way. Okay, because HITRUST openly says that, yeah, so the basic governance idea, okay, all those controls which are related with the governance of information security, those are adopted from ISO, and not only from ISO. Okay, there are different authoritative sources. So if you're not aware about HITRUST, you are aware about ISO, right? Yeah. So you have a fair idea that how HITRUST is going to function. You might not be aware of HITRUST, but you're aware of PCI DSS. You're not aware of HITRUST, but you're aware of SOC 2. You're not aware of HITRUST, but you're aware of HIPAA and GDPR. So that means you have the basic idea how to safeguard the information. But under the HITRUST CSF assessment, it is a more formalized way, okay, which can be adopted globally by any of your clients. Little extra time is required to be spent to streamline your entire security posture. So it will increase a little bit time, okay, but it is not going to be super expensive as it is assumed. So, and when I'm saying little extra time, again, it is organization's call, that how much time do you want to put in, okay, to be HITRUST certified. HITRUST has understood this challenge, that there are organizations who want to be HITRUST certified as soon as possible. Okay, so yes, there is a way out. Okay, there is a standard HITRUST E1, there is another one HITRUST I1, the third one is HITRUST R2. You prioritize what objective you want to achieve. And accordingly, you can take the decision whether you want to be HITRUST E1 certified, I1 certified, or R2 certified. E1 has 44 static controls, I1 has 182 controls, and R2 has, on an average, 235 controls to 250 controls with nominal parameters that can exceed based on the total scoping details which you are going to select. But based on these variations, you can decide that if it is E1, it may take little lesser time compared to R2. So that is how you have to plan, that what is your prime objective, Okay, so if it is an elementary certification, you are going ahead with E1, then you will be good. Okay, if there is a dedicated team who understand the basics of information security management, okay, then you can get this certification in 5 to 6 months of effort. Okay, similarly, if it is R2 certification, more number of controls, the time will little increase compared to E1 and I1. Is it too technical? No. You have heard about firewalls, you have heard about routers, you have heard about switches, you have heard about encryption, you have heard about audit logging and monitoring, you have heard about identity management, access management. What is new to you? Everything is known to you. It is just another best formal way of putting the things across and assessing those against few very interesting parameters, which is not seen in many other standards, many other frameworks. That makes high trust more worthy, okay, and more reliable, because high trust controls are going to be assessed against 5 parameters. Now don't be surprised when I'm saying 5 parameters, because still you have a choice. If you're going ahead with high trust E1, then your assessment is going to be assessed against a single parameter, that is the implemented one, that how effectively you have implemented the controls. If it is I1, again you're going to be assessed against single parameter, implemented one. But yes, if you want to create a difference, you really want to achieve the best result of implementing high trust, you are going ahead with high trust R2 assessment. Yes, your controls are going to be assessed against 5 parameters: policy, procedure, implemented, measured, and managed. Here also, HITRUST gives you a liberty that if you are a first timer organization, you can have a choice whether you want to go ahead with all 5 parameters at the same time, or you want to just go ahead with policy, procedure, and implemented one. So when you are implementing, okay, I'll just quote a small example. I mean, people will be able to relate that when we talk about endpoint security, and one of the important control that implementing antivirus in your endpoints. I mean, I don't think what is new in that. If it was not high trust, if it was some other framework or the standards, wouldn't you have implemented antivirus? Okay, so what are the basic features of an antivirus, or what sort of hardening or what sort of configuration we expect while deploying an antivirus in an endpoint? So those are the same thing even HITRUST is asking for, but in a much more formalized way, so that there is no scope of creating a gap or a loophole in your system, okay, while being HITRUST certified. So I mean, it is not too technical. Okay, whatever the technicalities are, those are well understood. That is not out of the box. It all depends on your IT infrastructure. Okay, I was just going through a few of the questions in the chat box. Okay, so the questions are related with Oracle, questions are related with AWS. Okay, questions are related with certain applications. Okay, as per my understanding, HITRUST openly says that I'm not certifying, okay, any service, any place. What we are certifying is an implemented systems. Okay, so not all the organizations are going to have the same systems. HITRUST still certify those organizations who are not on cloud, who have their own data centers. They have never been on cloud, but still they are HITRUST certified. So there is no mandatory requirement as such that you should go ahead with this kind of application, this kind of software, or this kind of hardware. Okay, what HITRUST wants you to produce is that if this particular application is being used, or if this kind of environment is going to be used, how logically that is being secured, how physically that is being secured. And yes, looking at the control statement descriptions, it is very easy to figure out. And on top of that, if you are availing the cloud infrastructure services, then those cloud service providers are already HITRUST certified, which makes your life much easier. You can simply go ahead and inherit those controls, and you will not have any obligation to provide the evidences of your environment, or dealing with your third parties or service provider asking those evidences to clear HITRUST assessment. So that makes life super easy, that reduces your time, that reduces your technical ability of or a technical requirement to produce all those evidences which are primarily related with IT infrastructure, which is hosted in a cloud environment. And last one in this list is whether the HITRUST is accepted within the United States only or outside of the organization. I mean, Since 2016, I'm certifying the organization across the globe. I'm validating their assessment. I'm submitting the assessment to HITRUST Alliance for QA and final draft and final report release. So this is applicable globally, and any organization, any part of the world can apply for HITRUST certification. Okay, and yeah, I mean they can be HITRUST certified. Uh, Over to you, Sammy. Uh, because I mean, you wear the businessman's hat. Okay, so I mean, I think you will be able to share more knowledge that when taking a decision that which assessment I should go for as an organization owner, as a CEO or a CTO. Uh, I think that will
Absolutely.
be good.
Thank you so much. Only Sanjeev can make encryption sound like coding. We should.
Sammy, your voice is cracking.
How about now? Is it the same?
Yeah, it's the same. Of course, this happens after we talk for 30 minutes before this without issue.
Ryan, go for it.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. I've alluded to it a little bit in my earlier commentary. For Hydros has been around over 17 years. For roughly the first 14 or 15 years, we had one assessment. About 3 years ago, we released the I1 assessment, and then 2 years ago, we released the uh, the E1. The original assessment is now called the R2, and each one is built to satisfy different business needs. You can think about them as small, medium, large for different size organizations. You could think about high, medium, low from a risk perspective. And the way that the controls are built is in line with those different methodologies or those different perspectives in consuming them or utilizing them. So Sanjeev mentioned the E1, which stands for Essentials 1 Year. It's a 1 year certification, and it's focused on the absolute essentials, meaning this is the floor. If you're not doing these 44 things, you need to rethink your life because you're going to invite headache or heartache into it in the very, very near future from an incident perspective. The next one, the I1, stands for Implemented 1 Year. So 1 year certification that has 182 controls in it, and those are focused on the leading security practices for maturing organizations. The R2 stands for risk based 2 year. 2 year certification with an interim assessment after the 1 year mark. This is the most comprehensive. This is the one that we've been known for since we were established over 17 years ago. I refer to it as a significant emotional event. It is really difficult. It's based off of 5 different maturity levels: policy, process, implemented controls. Are you measuring the controls? Are you managing the controls? And the average size assessment, because it's considered tailorable, you can pull in different regulatory factors. So again, think about ISO or NIST or what have you. You can add those to your assessment. So that 379 is representative of the core controls in the R2, but also the additional factors or the different other frameworks that have been added to that assessment. So that one we see as the one that people should strive, organizations should strive for, because there's 5 maturity levels versus the E1 and the I1 are only focused on the implementation of the controls. We believe that organizations should really push to mature up to the R2 over time. What we did, though, knowing that everybody's in different places within their cybersecurity privacy journey, is we actually nested the 3 assessments into themselves. So just like the picture shows, the 44 controls for the E1 were at the core of the 182 for the I1. The 182 for the I1 are at the core for the R2. So as you mature, you're not losing the work that you've done against the controls that you already have fully implemented. And what this did, I would love to say by absolute design, was it kind of gave organizations an on ramp into HITRUST that wasn't so punch in the face difficult like the R2 was for a lot of organizations. You can start with the E1, work with your customers who may be asking you get an R2, and over time get to that R2 again, not losing any of the work that you've already you know expended, the resources that you've expended. So it really depends, and this is the bullet at the bottom. It really depends on your business drivers, which one is the right option for you. If you're just getting started, I would recommend the E1. If you have a customer that's asking you to get I1 or R2, you may want to start there, or you may want to talk to them and say, hey, I fully intend on getting an I1 in the next 18 months, but can I do an E1 in the meantime, give you some immediate visibility into the essentials, and then move from there? Uh, I guess the last thing I would offer is if anybody has any questions or you have very unique circumstances, get with any one of the three of us. You're going to get a link to our contact information at the end of this. We're happy to kind of brainstorm, war game out what's most relevant or the best path for you. So I'll pause there. Sanjeev, anything to add that you think I missed? If not, I think I'm turning it back over to you.
No, Ryan, I mean, you have covered it very well. I mean, I don't think, I have something additional to share here.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, Sammy, you're audible.
Awesome. Cool. No, I think that was great, Ryan. I mean, we do get this question a lot. We ask them as well that, hey, what are your customers looking for? Are you getting a specific type of assessment as requirement, right, from your covered entities, if you're in the healthcare space, or the level of data that you store or process for your customers? Those are important considerations. The volume of data is also important, especially in the PHI space, right, in the healthcare space. That can add a lot of controls or requirements around new controls that you might have. So you can look at it in multiple ways, right? If you want to protect your organization from a wide variety of threats, if you are getting hit every day, HITRUST is the only compliance framework that is mapped to threat, frameworks, right? And MITRE's ATT-CK framework, and it'll give you that insight right out of the box. You should be able to protect yourself against most of those attack patterns that are taking place against regulated industries, right? Healthcare, financial services, and so on and so forth. So you take the security mindset, you have a solution. You take the compliance mindset with, protecting your organizations against HIPAA or GDPR or any other regulation. You would have a solution here as well. No, over to you, Sanjeev.
Thank you, Sammy. So yeah, there are a few questions. So the title is a little different here. Hydros reports. I mean, we cannot, of course, due to the crunch of time, we cannot display the whole report. I mean, those are freely downloadable from Hydros websites itself. What we wanted to highlight here is that sometimes, you get to see a gap, or a gap identified in the Hydros assessment. So, I mean, we just try to put the sample that, you know, uh, even with a cap or a gap, this is possible to be Hydra certified, provided you are addressing, those gaps or those caps with, proper corrective action plan. That how this can be, addressed, and next time when you're appearing, okay, for your interim or the recertifications, these areas have been, thoroughly scrutinized and a proper action plan has been executed, okay, to bring your maturity score up, so that next time when you're being hydro certified, or you are facing your interim assessment, at least there is no concern about reducing the maturity score against the evidences provided by you. So when you become hydro certified, whether it is E1 or I1 or R2, there are two things common which is going to be provided to you. The first is your HITRUST validated assessment report, and second is your HITRUST compliance certification. In E1 and I1, that is going to be valid for 1 year. In R2, that is going to be valid for 2 years, followed by an interim assessment. Along with this certificate, you will have the detailed, assessment validated assessment report. And one more thing which you can expect if you are HITRUST R2 certified organization going forward from 11.4 version with a nominal cost, that is your NIST cybersecurity risk assessment report version 2.0 without any additional effort. Okay, so when you are going for HITRUST R2 certification in the same amount of time with the same effort, okay, you can be entitled for a full-fledged cybersecurity, cyber risk assessment report based on version 2.0, based on NIC risk assessment. Yep. Uh, Thank you. So what happens that when you aim that this is what the certification you want to go ahead with, you select the assessment, you do your gap assessment, your readiness assessment, and finally when you populate your my CSF portal, and that is assigned to your assessor. After the assessor's validation, okay, of your submitted assessment, this is going to be submitted to HITRUST QA. And most of the time we have heard this question coming from the clients, that how is the QA process looks like, because that is something behind the scenes. Okay, so most of the time we as an assessor are interacting with the clients on a daily basis or till the time the project lasts. Okay, so we are available to them every time, but HITRUST QAs are not in picture. Okay, they interact with the HITRUST, and only because the assessment validation is the responsibility of that third party or the independent parties assessor. That's the reason most of the time HITRUST QA, they interacts with the assessor, because it's the assessor and their team, like their internal QA and their engagement executive. These are the team members, okay, of that independent assessing organization, okay, who have thoroughly reviewed and vetted each and every control against the evidences provided and all the maturity is score. So it is HITRUST QAs are tend to ask this question directly to the assessor and not to the client, though the question is for the client but through the assessor. So what goes behind the scene, how what are the different steps, whether that is a manual process, whether that is automated process, what are the different tasks, okay, which gets pops up, and clients are getting notified, and approximately what is a tentative time, okay, when we can expect that, whether it is E1 or I1 or R2, okay, the HITRUST QA process will be completed at least in this particular time frame, and we can expect the draft report to be released. So I will request Ryan to just highlight, or just put some light in this area.
Yeah, so to draw a quick comparison, and I'll use SOC 2 as an example, there's really only arguably two levels of quality assurance that go into any SOC 2. The organization being assessed has to sign a management representation letter saying that all the evidence they provided, all the assessment was done ethically, with integrity, was comprehensive, so on and so forth. Then you actually have the audit team that comes in, they do their testing, and the CPA signs off on the report. That's kind of where it ends. For HITRUST, we have those two layers as well. We require that a management representation letter be signed. We also require that the audit team sign off on a checklist saying that they did all these specific things. Boom, 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 boom. That needs to be reviewed by the engagement executive. So someone who's outside of the audit team, they also have to sign off on it. Additionally, we require that the audit team, in this case Prescient, have quality certified professionals on staff that review every single assessment and then sign off on that assessment. So right there we have three levels of quality assurance before the assessment has ever been sent to HITRUST. We've had arguably three different sets of eyes. When Sanjeev and his team hit submit in MyCSF, we run automation against that assessment before we ever look at it. About 250 different checks looking for common quality issues. And if it fails, we send that assessment back to Sanjeev and team. In 2024, we rejected 21.5% of assessments because there was quality issues in the assessment. Is that happening for NIST? No. PCI? No. FedRAMP? No. So on and so forth. Nobody's doing this. So if it passes that intelligence engine, then we have a quality assurance or information assurance analyst pick up the assessment and they run through it. They work with the assessor. Again, there's always going to be questions, clarifications, in some cases, additional evidence that has to be provided. If that assessment has questionable testing methodologies, meaning we don't feel comfortable that they followed our assurance methodology, we take that assessment out of the normal QA process and we put it into an escalated QA process, which I'm not going to bore you all with. That can lead to non-certification. Getting back to the normal QA process, if our QA analyst gets all their questions answered, the assessment looks clean, it gets sent to our compliance team. Our compliance team is not really checking the evidence per se, but they're checking the fact that the assessor did their job and the quality assurance analyst at HITRUST did their job. So we have this feedback loop of many layers getting back to the organization being assessed, to the external assessor like Prescient, to our own internal staff to make sure that the quality of these reports is of the utmost and is never in question. Yes, we have kicked external assessors out of the program. Yes, we don't certify organizations if they don't meet the threshold. Yes, we are constantly evaluating whether our quality program is sufficient. And there's actually two additional internal audit layers on top of what I just described, internal HITRUST, to make sure that we're doing what we say we're doing from a quality perspective. Again, I'm not going to bore you on all that because we're running out of time. I'm going to get back to typing answers to questions in the chat because I think we're going to run out.
Awesome. I think that brings us to the end of the presentation here. So you have all of our LinkedIn links here. If you want to grab the QR code from the screen, feel free to do so. We'll send you a copy of the recording as well, so we can follow up with you after. If you want to get more information about the HITRUST Alliance, there is a link here for you to check out all the great information and insights that's shared on the website for HITRUST, as well as Prescient Security's website if you want to learn more about different services that we offer. Our mission is to simplify security and compliance for all. That's what we do every day. We try to make these extremely complex and expensive and time-consuming, compliance requirements and really make them approachable and understandable for most of you. So please feel free to reach out to any one of us so we can help you kind of demystify some of these frameworks. Ryan, did you want to take any of the questions and answer them?
I do. I was actually typing to.
Go ahead.
So
I'll let you take a few.
Yeah, thanks. So the question about Oracle. So HITRUST doesn't certify organizations. HITRUST certifies, as Sanjeev mentioned, implemented systems. A couple things to think about with the Oracle incident that's somewhat still ongoing is, one, we're waiting on the results of the investigation. There is a conflict between what the malicious actor is saying online and what Oracle is saying was compromised. I can't tell you which one is right now, but based on what Oracle is saying, legacy Cerner servers were what were compromised. Those are not HITRUST certified. The Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, OCI, is what is certified. Oracle is saying that was not breached at this point. So, Tiffany, to your question, maybe in our report for 2025, Oracle may fall in there if it turns out the OCI was actually compromised, but based on what Oracle is saying publicly and what they're telling us, that was not the case. I will also offer that anytime we find out that one of our certified environments was compromised, the first thing we do is to your second part of your question is try to figure out what went wrong. It's less about removing a certification, more finding out, was this a control failure, control degradation, or something else, so we can continue to improve. The last question that I'll answer, I know we're like right up against time, but it was asked, I got SOC 1, I got SOC 2, ISO 27001, everything under the sun. Why does HITRUST matter? The answer is most organizations have all of those things and they're still getting breached. They're still having incidents. Less than 1% of HITRUST certified environments are having that happen, feeling the effects of that. That's the big difference, because we're basing our controls, the ones that we're forcing you to have in place and have mature, are the ones protecting against the threats that are happening today. So we're not just making this stuff up. We're letting the threat actors tell us what's important, and then we're forcing you to mature those controls. So that's the difference between all those different standards and what HITRUST is doing today. And I could give a much better argument if we had more time. And I'm happy to connect offline. So you saw the QR code for my LinkedIn, all of our LinkedIns. Feel free to reach out. I talk about this stuff all day. I'm super passionate about it. I'm happy to, you tell me I'm wrong and prove me I'm wrong, and I will take that back internally and tell everybody inside they're wrong, or we can figure out, where to go from there. But anyway, Sammy, Sanjeev, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate the discussion, and hope everybody has a great day.
Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for joining and asking questions. We'll share the recording, and we'll be in touch with all of you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Samuel. Thank you, Ryan.